B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins, news and comment. It's Tuesday, January 23rd, 2018. As he prepares to wing his way to Davos, Switzerland, to hobnob with billionaires and the global elite, Donald Trump dropped a little anti-global stink bomb and has potentially launched a new trade war. Now, I want to be clear that I have issues with so-called free trade. And I think that it's very rational for the United States to adopt some protectionist positions, protecting American jobs and perhaps even expanding the manufacturing base here in the United States. That's a bit of a dream, but it is technically possible. And so I am not reflexively against the idea of imposing tariffs on other countries and their businesses that game the U.S. system, undercut our prices, and dump their products into the U.S. market. But what Trump announced today appears to be driven by kind of arbitrary personal angst. He decided to impose tariffs that will decline over the next 4 years on solar panels and washing machines. Now, I don't have a big objection on washing machines. Whirlpool is the only manufacturer I know of left in the United States. And when you go to buy a new washer or dryer, you basically, choose a brand. But beneath the brand, they're all basically made in China by the same handful of companies. And there are a few that are manufactured by Samsung in South Korea. And so I don't object on a fundamental basis for the U.S. to adopt a rational scheme to protect American industry and American jobs. But this is not a rational approach. This appears to be based on just the personal pique of the guy in the White House. And as he travels to Davos, Switzerland for the annual World Economic Forum, the CEOs are thrilled. They love the corporate tax breaks that Trump has announced, the new foreign overseas profit rate of only 10%, which will actually incentivize American-based global companies to position more of their manufacturing outside the United States. Despite all that, it's going to be an interesting welcome for Trump. He is one of them, and I'm sure that in some respects he will revel in the attention that he draws from people who he wants to admire him as badly as he can feel it. But this announcement about the tariffs on solar panels is projected to cost about 23,000 jobs in the United States. And what is fascinating is, according to a report by David Baker in the San Francisco Chronicle, the solar panel tariffs were sought by two companies, Solar World Americas, an Oregon subsidiary of a German company, and Suniva, based in Georgia, the majority of which is owned by a Chinese business. So we see job loss for Americans. We see benefits to the American subsidiaries of German and Chinese investors. And this is somehow a win for America, American business, American workers. It's incoherent. And I can only speculate that Trump, in part, wants to puncture the bubble of renewable energy as he turns to coal and extraction of more oil, offshore drilling. And so this appears to be driven by politics. Now, on the washing machine side, we have Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio, a pretty obvious progressive, who said that this is welcome news. The tariffs will help level the playing field and show anyone who tries to cheat our trade laws that they won't get away with it. And Whirlpool has major plants in Ohio, so that's not so far out of line. And they hint that there could be additional trade sanctions in the form of tariffs announced for steel and other products. And again, if Trump were rational about this, if he had set up a committee, a commission, or even brought a couple of his billionaire buddies together and they hammered out a plan, and we saw the direct benefits to protecting jobs in the United States, I could actually support Trump on this. He had the right position, maybe the wrong reasoning to bail out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but it was already dead. And it was one of the biggest bonehead moves that Obama attempted, particularly because the TPP was negotiated in secret. And all the games that they played around that were so insulting to Americans who were trying to pay attention to that. It'll be interesting to see how the plutocrats in Davos receive one of their own, the orange-haired monster. Well, we're getting some analysis now of the Democratic cave-in on the government shutdown. They certainly did buckle. Now, they got the 6-year CHIP renewal, the Children's Health and Insurance Program. That's fine. That was going to happen eventually anyway, I believe. But they lost leverage on the issue of the Dreamers and passing a clean DACA bill. And my pal, Congressman Luis Gutierrez of Chicago, said they blinked. He's a Democrat, by the way, in case you're not sure. They blinked because they'll always put the party and the success of the party first. It's the only word they know in Spanish, mañana. And clearly, Chuck Schumer got a lot of heat from Joe Manchin, from other conservative Democrats, John Tester of Montana, Donnelly of Indiana, and he caved. He decided that it was too risky to the re-election prospects of these non-progressive Democrats to continue a shutdown that was focused on immigration issues. Because these conservatives don't want to touch that issue. They operate in states where Trump won based on his hate-filled anti-immigrant positions. And so they're the ones who we can look to for the cave-in at a critical stage. And they caved in with the weaselly, it's not even a promise, weaselly pledge from Mitch McConnell. And I don't have the quote in front of me, but he said something to the effect that he would be inclined, if the shutdown ended, to hold an up or down vote on DACA after a vigorous debate on a larger range of immigration issues, which is his way of saying you've got to trade the border wall for the Dreamers. And it's fascinating because the Republicans use hostage language, but they feel that the military was held hostage by this debate over budget issues and the short-term government shutdown. No, the real hostages were the children who were facing cutoff of their health insurance program and the Dreamers, whose concerns are still dangling out there, with many members of Congress saying, what are you worried about? The deadline isn't until March. Leave your life on hold. Don't make any plans, and we'll get around to it. And get this, the continuing resolution that was jammed through yesterday also included more tax cuts, $30 billion of unpaid tax cuts related to further dismantling of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And you didn't hear any Democrats complaining about that. They sucked it up and voted for it. And so the ugly process of the wheeling and dealing, the bluffing and brinksmanship in Washington writes another sorry chapter, kicks the can down the road for it's not even a full 3 weeks. I guess it's not even a full 2 weeks. It's a week from Thursday. Am I correct? I think that's right. So they risked a lot, and then they caved in and gave it all up. And Jeff Merkley, Democrat of Oregon, who did vote against the continuing resolution, said McConnell's track record of keeping his commitments is thin at best. Well, ask Jeff Flake. He was promised, if he voted for the tax cuts, the corporate and rich tax cuts, that there would be a clean DACA vote in January. Oh, never mind. Two interesting reports related to the current Attorney General, Jeffrey Beauregard, Jim Crow Sessions III. One is a very serious issue. As you know, Sessions has been in the doghouse with Trump. All the negative tweets and the smack comments that have been made because Sessions did the right thing and recused himself from the Trump-Russia investigation. That didn't stop him. He was technically recused when he participated in the firing of FBI Director James Comey, who was not willing to let go of the Russia investigation. So, in trying to recover the love of Donald Trump, Jeff Sessions has been pounding the newly appointed director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, to clean house and to fire people who were associated with Jim Comey, including the Bureau's deputy director, Andrew McCabe. And it's a little confusing because with the pressure that was put on, McCabe announced in late December that he would retire this March when he becomes fully eligible for his full pension. But Chris Wray is saying, wait a minute, this is my call. And he reportedly has threatened to resign if Sessions didn't back off. So this exposes the inside game in the Trump administration and the non-recusal of Jeff Sessions. Because after all, the issue with McCabe is that he ran the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Then he was assigned to also run the investigation into Trump associates once the FISA warrants were issued. Oh, and there are plenty of issues about that. I air them out all the time. But in trying to pressure Wray to fire McCabe, Sessions is once again violating his alleged recusal. And according to Axios, Wray has threatened to resign if Sessions didn't stop pressuring him to fire McCabe. So Sessions consulted with White House counsel Don McGahn. McGahn said, well, you better back off. We can't handle another change at the FBI right now. The other way that Sessions is in the news that we have learned that he was questioned for several hours last week by Robert Mueller and the staff of the special counsel. No information is leaked so far on the exact discussion, but it appears to be related to the issues of obstruction of justice related to the firing of Jim Comey and the pretty obvious contradictions of Jeff Sessions' claims of no contact with Russians before the inauguration, despite the accumulating proof of multiple contacts, not only with the Russian ambassador. So Jeff Sessions is really on a couple of hot seats right now, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Yesterday, I updated you on billionaire San Francisco progressive Democratic activist Tom Steyer and how he is hosting house parties on the weekend before President's Day in February to promote impeachment of Donald Trump. And today, the New York Times weighs in with a kind of a review, a report on Steyer's efforts, and in particular, how he is making the Democratic leadership squirm. And I'm on Steyer's side here, as you know. I believe that Trump has been impeachable from day one on the Emoluments Act and other issues. We don't need Russiagate. We don't need Bob Mueller's report to proceed with impeachment efforts against Trump. It will take time to marshal and galvanize public opinion. But the Democratic leaders don't even want to try. Nancy Pelosi has had direct conversations with Tom Steyer, where it was reported she said, stop this, and he said, no. And You have to ask, why would Nancy Pelosi look at this and say no impeachment? Because you can make a strong case that if the Democrats run on impeachment as a national issue, it could help flip the House of Representatives to Democratic control in the midterm elections coming up this November. But I believe she is captive to polls and to the expectations that Democrats, moderates in particular, who are running in purple states that were carried by Trump or where Trump had a big impact, will get slammed if they try to take on Trump. And I think this is folly. I think that it is, this cautious, poll-driven political approach. When it's very clear, the polls show that, 72% of Democrats support impeachment? Let me get the number for you. I lied. It was only 70%, not 72%. And overall, 41% of Americans support impeachment. And until you build the case, take the political risk, stand on principle and not simple electoral politics, I don't think much is going to change. And there's so many people. We saw the signs at the Women's March. It's Mueller time. There are so many people who think that Mueller's going to pop this report in the near future and that everything will just fall into place and Trump will be impeached. It doesn't work that way. I got my big break when we saw the attempted impeachment of Richard Nixon, which led to his resignation. It took over 2.5 years from the time of the Watergate break-in until Nixon finally resigned. And during that time, initially Republicans came to his defense, but then principled Republicans recognized that he had broken the law, that he was not fit to remain as president. And that's when the tide turned. And once it starts to turn, it can turn very quickly. And if we're still using the tide metaphor, go all the way up the beach and cover all the sand. But the Democrats are risk averse. That's what we saw in their cave-in on the government shutdown and the DACA issue. And it's what we see all the damn time. And I want to thank John Zweibel, who forwarded me a link to Ira Glass's episode of This American Life. And I'll find it and throw up the link in today's podcast. Because Ira Glass and his team take a hard look at the Democrats and hear Democrats themselves describe how the party doesn't stand for anything, and that's why voters don't flock to it. It's a very serious problem. Trump is a monster. He is a threat to the republic, and the Democrats simply are not up to the task of taking him on and taking him down. Every day I like to pause for a second and thank the people who support my work here at the Peter B. Collins Podcast. Stuart Russell doesn't get mentioned often enough. He kicks in $10 a month. So does Brian Massey. Oh, no, he's $5, sorry. And Arlene Montemarano. I want to thank them for their support. I'd like to thank you, but you got to take out a subscription first. Come on over to peterbcollins.com. Perhaps even pause this podcast for a moment while you do the business. You pull down on the menu, select Become a Subscriber. It takes you to the sign-up page. You can choose a level of support that fits your budget, and I will be very, very grateful. Channeling Trump, a man who was full of venom about the fake news disseminated by CNN, got a hold of their main switchboard number in Atlanta, and from Detroit, Brandon Greisemer, I'm guessing it his name, it could be Griesemer, began calling CNN on January 9th. He made a series of threats to kill employees at the company. Some of the quotes that were jotted down by people who got his happy calls. He said that CNN is fake news. I'm coming to gun you all down. Fuck you, fucking niggers. I'm on my way right now to gun the fucking CNN cast down. Fuck you. And here, in a a statement that parallels, I'm a stable genius. Greisemer said, I'm smarter than you, more powerful than you. I have more guns than you, more manpower. Your caste is about to get gunned down in a matter of hours. Now, I've never heard a news team referred to as a caste, but that's interesting. The calls continued the next day when the man made disparaging remarks regarding Jewish individuals. He claimed to have a team of people promised to fucking gun every single last one of you down. So he's been arrested. He was released the same day on $10,000 bond. If he had been Muslim, he'd still be locked up, and we'd be learning about how they've read all his Facebook posts. There are 2 FBI informants who have been placed in his midst, one posing as an Islamic State recruiter. That's the playbook. That's the script when you're Muslim. But as a presumed white American from Detroit, you get the kid glove treatment. There is a lengthy pre-publication article at the New York Times website today, and this story will be the cover story in the Sunday New York Times Magazine this coming weekend. It's lengthy. I've only gotten to peruse part of it so far, but the headline reads, How Arafat Eluded Israel's Assassination Machine. And the story recounts multiple efforts that Israel undertook to assassinate the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization, going all the way back to October of 1982. And again, I haven't read the whole article, so I'm going to withhold judgment. But this is the kind of piece that is read by a Zionist with a sense of satisfaction, with a righteous, judgmental approval of the assassination of a presumed enemy of the State of Israel. So take a look, follow the link, and after I've had a chance to read the whole thing, I may comment further. The leadership of the USA Gymnastics Organization, the chairman, the vice chairman, and the treasurer have all resigned after the I don't know how you can describe the gut-wrenching victim statements that took place over 3 or 4 days last week at the protracted sentencing hearing of Larry Nassar, the former team doctor for Michigan State University and USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic team of women gymnastics performers, and his serial abuse of well over 100 victims stands as a new low in American collegiate athletics. And these people should have resigned a long time ago. Also, I think the president of Michigan State University should resign because they presided over cover-ups and simply ignoring the claims of multiple credible victims about this man, and allowed him to continue his disgusting criminal behavior. I give credit to The Guardian for an enterprise report exposing that one of the important links in the chain, the killing chain, of America's drone operations is based near a cornfield in central Kansas at the McConnell Air Force Base, where the 184th Intelligence Wing of the Kansas Air National Guard. They sit in a room 24/7 and watch monitors with video feeds that come from drones that can hover for up to 14 hours over a specific location, high enough that the people on the ground don't know it's there, but close enough that with the telephoto lenses and all the gear they have, to be able to, almost count the hairs on the mustache of the guy they're about to kill. And I think the article does a good job of presenting the military's arguments that this, saves American lives. But it also exposes that many innocent civilians have been killed, and this kind of antiseptic remote control warfare has much greater impact and casualties than the U.S. military admits. According to airwars.org, by any measure, 2017 was the worst year for civilians in the fight against the Islamic State. As battles move deep into Iraqi and Syrian cities, they estimate that at least 3,875 non-combatants were killed by coalition actions during 2017 up through November. In Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen, since 2002, nearly 10,000 people are estimated to have died in over 4,400 drone strikes. And the estimate is that as many as 1,488 were civilians and 331 were children. And a New York Times study showed that 1 in 5 strikes kills civilians. And that number is 31 times higher than what the military acknowledges. I don't know about you, but I often have real serious problems with passwords. You know, you set up a password and then they tell you got to change it. And I have a cheat sheet of all my passwords. It still causes me trouble. And just yesterday, I was updating an iPhone and I was at a shop and they demanded a certain password that I couldn't remember. I took 3 stabs at it and then it locked me out. It's infuriating. And so I have great empathy for the governor of Hawaii. David Ige has announced that the reason why there was a 38-minute delay in reporting to the public in Hawaii that the false alarm about an incoming ballistic missile was in fact false. The reason was, I have to confess that I don't know my Twitter account logons and the passwords. I know how you feel, and I feel your pain. Bloomberg has revealed sweatshop conditions at another subcontractor that manufactures those iPhones in China, in the industrial city of Sichuan, which is about 6 hours' drive from Shanghai. Workers stand for up to 10 hours a day in a noisy factory, very hot working conditions with noxious chemicals, and the single entry and exit is a door that's only 12 inches wide. Think about the deaths due to fire at the garment sweatshops in Bangladesh and other locations. Hundreds throng through a main door that opens only about 12 inches. Off duty, they return to debris-strewn dorms, bereft of showers or hot water. Many go without washing for days at a time. The manufacturing complex is situated outside the city in a prison-like setting, ringed by electrified and barbed wire fences. The facilities violated 14 of Apple's supplier responsibility standards. And the company acknowledges, we know our work is never done and we investigate each and every allegation that's made. But this is how the toys that we love so much, and I just, upgraded to an iPhone 7. That's where they come from. And Apple papers over the real issues that its subcontractor employees face. But they continue to exploit the low wages and high productivity of these workforces. Pope Francis did the right thing. He apologized for insulting the victims of pedophile priests, insisting that they show proof before he removes a bishop in Chile who he appointed. Francis acknowledged he misspoke when he said that he needed to see proof to believe the accusations. He corrected himself, used the term evidence. Here I have to apologize because the word proof hurt them. It hurt a lot of abused people. It's a slap in the face. In Orange County, California, there are these massive tent encampments occupied by homeless people. And Orange County is evicting as many as 1,000 of them and demanding that they tear up their encampments, which are along a hiking and bike trail in one area of Orange County, just a few miles from Disneyland. Now, the rub here is that they are telling these people that we'll store your gear, we'll protect your belongings, and we'll direct you to a shelter. But with 1,000 people being displaced and only 250 shelter beds available in all of Orange County, you can do the math and see just how atrocious and immoral this is to evict people right in the middle of winter. It's really inhumane. In the skies, there's been an exponential increase in the number of service dogs flying with their human owners, and Delta Airlines has announced they've had enough. They said it flew 250,000 animals last year, an increase of 150% over 2015, while incidents such as biting or pooping and peeing by the animals nearly doubled since 2016. Now, the Air Carrier Access Act of 1986 stipulates free travel for any animal that is trained to assist a person with a disability or that provides emotional support. And I love my little dog Chloe. We have never attempted to fly her in the cabin of an airliner because I don't think she could keep quiet for very long. And I think it's an imposition on the other passengers. But I've traveled with many well-behaved pets, and in general, I don't have any issue. But the airline reports dogs blocking beverage carts, cats urinating on seats, ducks wandering the aisles, and in the most serious cases, people have been severely bitten by larger dogs that are described as emotional support animals. So the new rules. Passengers with trained service animals will need to submit a veterinary health form at least 48 hours before travel to the new Service Animal Support Desk. Customers with emotional support animals or psychiatric service animals must do the same, but also have to provide a letter from a doctor or mental health professional and a signed document saying the animal is trained to behave in public. And Delta is prohibiting farm poultry, hedgehogs, and anything with tusks. And finally today, a personal farewell to Hugh Masekela. He died at the age of 78 in his native South Africa, in Johannesburg. And he really touched me. I saw him perform in Chicago in the 1970s. And I'm going to link to one of my favorite Masekela tracks. It's not Grazing in the Grass. It's called Stimula, Coltrane. And it's evocative of the apartheid era in South Africa, when blacks were forced to work in the coal mines for minimal wages if they got paid at all. And Hugh Masekela was a giant. He fought addiction over the years, but came through it and was extremely creative, played with Paul Simon and others. And I am going to miss him. Thanks for listening to my daily news and comment podcast. Thanks to Tom Murray, Zoe Jusko, and Tim Buck. They're new subscribers over at YouTube. That's where you can find it.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails.